This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 465 for the week of January 13th, 2019. Hey, when Broly? What's up? Welcome to Kanzenshuu, the podcast, an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site, Kanzenshuu. We cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. My name is Mike. You may see me around as Vegito EX. Here, episode 465 of our podcast. We have quite an extravaganza for you here this episode. We have so many voices here on the show to talk about a variety of things. The main content this episode that we're going to get to momentarily is a review of Dragon Ball Super Broly. Yes, it's hitting America this week. You'll be able to go see the English dub yourself. Here on the show to talk about it from its original Japanese theatrical debut, Jake Herms here from Kanzenshuu, and then AJ as well, one of our Kanzenshuu contributors, working behind the scenes on some maybe production animation stuff, long-term projects. Also, forum moderator extraordinaire, and yeah, I guess he does all that YouTube stuff as well. You know, maybe you've seen Anime AJ stuff out there. And then after that, we have some important, if not bittersweet, Kanzenshuu news for you on the flip side of the movie review. We're going to have the entire Kanzenshuu administrative staff for that one, so definitely make sure you stick around after the review for some good chat there. I don't want to beat around the bush too much, because we got a hell of a review for you, a hell of a chat after that, and well, I have to edit the entire thing, so the more I talk, the more I have to edit. So without further ado, first up for you, we got the movie review of Dragon Ball Super Broly with Jake and Ajay, and stick around after that for some more chat, and then I'll hit you on the flip side of all of that to wrap up the entirety of our episode here. So, onward to the review. Talk to you in a bit. All right, joining us for a review extravaganza. This is, you know, we were able to do kind of like day and date with Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. Not so much with Broly, but I think it's okay because I'm kind of interested in doing it in this fashion where the movie is hitting international audiences like now. If you're in America, you're going to be able to go see it this week. I know some other countries already got it. It's going to be hitting some other places pretty soon. So the review from our perspective here on the podcast is going to be kind of unique in that the folks here have seen it in Japan in theaters. I have not seen it, so I'm really approaching it from a curiosity standpoint. And then the listener, you will be able to take that and do whatever you want with it and then go see the movie. Two of you actually saw the movie together in theaters in Japan at least once. Let's start with Jake. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Took a nice little trip over there. Saw a movie, saw some sights. It seems like it was a pretty good time.
Oh, yeah. I think it went well. I'm still sorting through the photos I took.
Oh, I love your photos. You were tweeting up some good stuff right when you got there.
Yeah, I need to get back to that. But yeah, I'm embarrassed to say how many photos I actually took. So yeah, I'll be filtering through to try and find like the cream of the crop for maybe the next year or so.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to that. And then over there to see the movie as well. I guess this is something you were kind of interested in. Some person named AJ.
Just a little bit. A
tiny little bit.
Passing curiosity at best.
Seems like you guys had a pretty good time, huh?
It was good, yeah. I'm a lot like Jake. I have so much footage that I recorded and I still haven't edited any of it together. It's just sat on my PC mocking me.
Now, AJ, how much have you talked about the movie? Obviously, quite a bit on your YouTube channel. People may be coming to this having already heard some of what you've talked about. So what does exist? Like, what kind of slant did you take so far?
So I've done one review so far of like the film as a whole. And then I did like an animation thing that was like 40 minutes long because it's, yeah.
There's a lot.
There is a lot. Yeah, I mean, do you want my like general opinions on it so far, or just? Oh,
we're gonna get to that. Don't you worry about that.
Okay.
and I say that so as to further then say, if you're interested in more kind of like nitty gritty on that subject, you certainly have it. What I'm interested in right now is it's actually been a little bit since you guys saw the movie. So as opposed to Battle of Gods and Resurrection F, when Julian was in Japan and we got like that immediate kind of walking out of the theater thoughts on it. You've had some time to reflect on it a little bit, so I'm curious to go back and listen to what you've already said about the movie in comparison to what you may say about it here. So that's kind of how I'm going to approach this review as well. All right, I guess let's set the stage a little bit. Dragon Ball Super Broly. It's a brand new theatrical film, the third in a series of kind of big time movies for the Dragon Ball franchise. This is a movie that is taking place, I guess you can say, after the Dragon Ball Super television series. And this guy named Broly is back. Where I want to start with the both of you here is, what were your thoughts on kind of like everything going into the movie? Let's start with the return of Broly as kind of like a concept. Jake, where were you going into the film?
I guess you could say that was sort of the low point in my expectations for the film.
Yeah.
Which was kind of the same thing with Resurrection F, is like... once I learned, they're bringing Frieza back, it's like, that didn't really get me excited. But then everything else I found out after that point kind of got me more excited. So in a way, it was kind of good to get the the worst news out of the way first.
The worst wish in history was actually Broly was coming back. All right.
Finding out that that they were revamping the character and all that stuff Toriyama and other people said about they're going to give him more depth and give a more human side to him and all that stuff, that did make me intrigued to see what they would do with him.
Yeah, I think we all kind of said on the podcast over time, it's like, all right, if you're going to bring back Broly, all right, Toriyama, let's see what you got. AJ, what was your take going into the movie there?
Yeah, I mean, when they first revealed Broly, I was like, why? Didn't we just do this with Kale? And like, isn't the whole point of this film to like refresh everything? Like, we have a new art style, like everything feels new. Why are we then bringing back an old character? That didn't really work for me.
Yeah, we just did this with Kale. The entire point of Kale from Toei themselves was, let's do Broly in Dragon Ball Super. And then Toriyama said, this isn't quite what I want to do. And then, we ended up with Caulifla, kind of that combination there. And then to have everyone come back around again and go, you know what? No, let's actually do Broly. It just seemed confusing.
It was very strange. I'm much like Jake. Like, as soon as they started saying, well, it's a new Broly, really. We're conscious of his character, and I mean, there's like a quote that I don't remember the exact quote, but you can read between the lines. It's basically like, he didn't really have much to him before, so we're
doing all saying that.
Yeah, so it's like we've done something with him this time, and that made me a lot more optimistic. I think a lot of the trailers that were very much just screaming, and I was like, that feels like old Broly, so I didn't really know what to expect going in at all, really. I was just, I was aware that obviously Minus was a thing, and they were talking all about destiny and all of this stuff, so I knew there was something there, but they weren't really selling me on new Broly through trailers alone.
Yeah. Okay. Before we move on, I do want to pimp a little bit here. Podcast episode 449 from back in July. Heath and I gave the full history on Broly as a character. So that may set the stage if you aren't super in-depth knowledgeable about this character, where he came from, and why it was significant that he was coming back. Pause, go back and listen to 449. Come on back and listen to the rest of the episode. So we talked about, all right, our thoughts, your take on Broly coming back as a character. The kind of other side of the coin here was not just, all right, we're refreshing old ideas, but meanwhile, we're refreshing the entire production of this production. So AJ, we have like a new director, we have a new animation director, we have the same composer along for the ride, but in general, the visual style of this movie, specifically character designs from Naohiro Shintani, I mean, it's a new flair for the series, while at the same time echoing older flares of the series. Clearly, from your perspective, as someone who's more interested and devoted to this than anyone that I've seen in, the 21 years that I've been doing this, in quotes, professionally, you were clearly excited for it. Did it live up to it in the end?
Oh God, yes. Like, it's unbelievable. It left me lost for words. It's such an overwhelming film. Even if you're not into animation, I think it's impossible to walk away from that film not going, wow. Like, that's, it's weird to then go and look at something like Resurrection F and something like Battle of Gods that, at the time, I think most fans were like, yeah, this looks fine. There's some pretty cool stuff in here. Sure, why not? And then
it looks like a movie, sure.
Yeah, you look at Broly and you're like, oh no, we were watching glorified TV specials. Wow. We're in full on, movie top tier territory right here, and it's incredible.
Well, let's focus on that visual spectacle for a little bit here, since it's totally hard to ignore. A lot of response that I saw coming out of the film after its preview screening and then right after its debut was that it's kind of like a visual assault on the senses, and that it's kind of difficult to rest or take a break, give your eyes a little bit of a break there, for kind of a lack of a better way to phrase it. Jake, did you feel that way watching this film?
Yeah, I think the pacing is very frantic, and it does feel at times that maybe more of some of the connective tissue might have been cut out just to get to the battles quicker. And yeah, so there's not too much breathing room. I mean, I feel to a certain extent that's done intentionally to keep things moving along, keep everything excited, but I think I would have appreciated a little more quiet moments. I mean, there are a few of those too, like when Brawley gives his backstory, more or less, like, explaining about his pet and all that stuff. But I would have liked more of that overall.
Yeah. AJ, what'd you think? As someone who's going in looking, I think you described it as you saw it a couple times. Like the first time, I'm just going to look at the animation. Second time, I'm going to kind of pay attention to a couple other things. Did you feel like you couldn't blink throughout the entire movie?
Oh, it's definitely overwhelming. It's weird because the fighting doesn't really start until an hour in. Like, there is a very short fight early on. I don't know whether we're going full spoilers in this podcast, but...
Yeah, so the way that I'm kind of introducing this episode, which I haven't recorded yet, but I will record it, is that, like, we're kind of in the middle, where we're not necessarily going to tell you every single little detail about it, but because the movie is coming out, like, don't necessarily shy away for something if it backs up your point.
Okay.
I mean... Essentially, the first quarter of the movie is the flashback portion. Right. Then the second quarter is in the present day, leading, and all the stuff that leads up to the big fight. And then the second half of the movie is essentially just the fight.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I was going. Like, you have an incredibly long build-up. Like, it is an hour. And then it's 30 minutes of pure, non-stop fighting. And it's incredibly high quality action, and a lot of it's very well boarded, and you can understand the flow of the majority of the fight. But when you get to some of the most, I guess, idiosyncratic sequences from very famous animators like Naotoshi Shida, and those sequences can last upwards of 3 minutes, that's when it starts to get a bit like, whoa, okay, I can barely even sort of take in what is happening right now. And I don't know if it's necessarily a massive negative, because it's not like that deeply impacts any of the narrative that's happening at the time. I mean, there isn't really much. It's big guy punches, little guy, and vice versa. So I don't know. I guess it depends how much you value readability of choreography over extended sequences. I wouldn't say it's like a massive issue across the entire film, but from certain animators, I'd say that's definitely a thing.
Do you think that might change a little bit when we end up with the home release and you kind of have it on the smaller screen, something a little more digestible in front of you that you can kind of go back and forth a little bit between?
I think it's possible. I know that, for example, one of Shida's scenes, like in episode 130 of Super, I've seen that so many times. But, one of his traits is that everything moves so fast, it almost looks like it's sped up. And there are small little details within his sequences that there's no way, no matter how much you watch that back and forth, unless you paused and like look through stuff, you'd miss it easily. And I think, that's just a downside of his animation. But I don't know. Again, I think it will vary very much on what you look for from a fight. I mean, it's visual spectacle, and it comes at a point that is supposed to be a huge, visual smack in the face. And so I think it works for what it is. So I don't know. It's hard to say.
Okay. Well, this kind of gets back to, Jake, something you were saying a little bit before, is it's moving at such a brisk pace. As we learned that it was going to be Broly, as we learned of the production shift, and we saw some of these examples of what they were truly going for, which was very exciting in and of itself, it did leave me a little bit concerned that it might be all in service of just that kind of like audiovisual spectacle and not on the narrative side of things. Jake, you said it did move at a brisk pace. Does that mean that there's some connective tissue missing between scenes? Does it kind of feel like things are just happening for no reason? Or does it feel honest and true and legitimate the whole way through?
I mean, it feels like things are happening for a reason, but sometimes it feels very fast. Like, when Chilai and Lemo find Broly and Paragus, it's like they talk for a bit and then immediately like, oh, let's go take you back to Frieza. He'll be glad to see you. It's like it kind of cuts directly to their spaceship taking off.
Okay.
There's a few things like that just in that setup part of the film that just seem like you get what they're going for, but it seems like they're kind of rushing through to the next thing.
Did it feel like there was animation that was cut, or is it just, no, that's just how they wanted to direct it?
I mean, I'm not sure, just going off my memories at this point, because, yeah, I haven't seen it since then.
Right.
But
well, the weird thing is, there are some sequences that we saw in trailers and screenshots that aren't in the film, which is really odd. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not unusual for that to happen. Sometimes stuff gets cut down for time, but...
And I guess at this point I should say that I have the novelization and the light novel version, and I've read neither of them. And it seems increasingly unlikely that I ever will actually read this thing cover to cover. But
That's
theoretically
right.
speaking, there might be details about... The novelization might include some stuff they cut from the movie, but I don't know. I mean, from what I've seen, I have read, even before seeing the movie, when I was in Japan, I picked up the novelization, I looked through it a bit, so I got a sense of the dialogue, but it does seem to just be like the script with, just descriptions, only enough description to make the dialogue coherent, without any, extra backstory, except for, one or two things, there's some extra character names and whatnot, but...
Sure.
It doesn't, from what I've seen of the novelization, doesn't seem like I haven't found evidence of massive plot points cut from the film so far.
All right. And I know Julian's very interested in reading both, if not translating them on his own, just for his own educational purposes. So I look forward to that.
Yeah.
AJ, what was your take on the overall kind of connective tissue throughout the film?
So the way I described it in my review was that if you've ever seen the theatrical cut of Batman versus Superman, for me, when I saw that film, it felt like it was kind of going from scene to scene, and it never gave you a second to sort of have an establishing shot, let you breathe and take in what's happening.
Sure.
And sort of, I guess it's, we talk about connective tissue, and I don't think that necessarily needs to be, here's how a character got from here to this point, but it's like, it's that sort of unspoken flow between scenes that's really important. And I feel that so heavily within the first 20 minutes of the film. And you were saying, what's the difference between your immediate reaction and where you're at now? And the more I think about, that opening 20 minutes and, even the second, third time I saw the film, that feels worse and worse to me. It's so disjointed.
All right, well, let's go to it right now. So again, we're not necessarily looking to spoil every detail, but we've already seen some of this in the trailers. We're talking about the film. So here we go. The opening of the film is this flashback sequence where we learn about King Cold passing down the reins to Frieza. We see some stuff about the Saiyans. We get some details on the Scouters, all that good stuff. What's so curious about that to me is that was okay, well, if we're going to do all this cool stuff, well, let's do Bardock. Let's throw in Minus. And Frieza's in this movie later because I guess he's alive, so we should show him here. Did it feel like a part of this film, or did it feel like, well, we wanted to do Minus, so we built some stuff around Minus?
Maybe the latter. Okay, so I don't know if you've ever... If you've ever read The Far Side, there's this one Far Side cartoon where the caption is, horses are introduced to North America. This historic event. And so then the picture is a bunch of Native Americans standing around with a bunch of horses standing around shaking hands. And... I don't know, this might be a stretch, but the opening reminds me a lot of that cartoon where the joke is it's this complex historical event that's just boiled down to this absurd thing where they're just standing around shaking hands. And the opening of this film, it's like, well, how did Frieza meet the Saiyans? And so we see in this film, Cold shows up one day and says, hey, Saiyans, here's my son Frieza. Meet him. It's like how did the Saiyans get the Scouters? Well, it turns out that day, Frieza said, hey, Saiyans, here are these Scouters I have now. Take them and use them. That's what the intro, it feels very just, everything is the minimum number of words required to explain the backstory.
So in that regard, did it feel, that was always at least my complaint about the Dragon Ball Minus bonus chapter, where it's like, all right, yeah, you do in fact have words on a page that say what is happening, and that does relate to the next page. However, ... So was this kind of incarnate in animation?
Yeah, I guess it feels true to Minus in that regard. And I mean, I'm one of maybe 7 people on Earth who doesn't hate Minus. But it's a weird thing where it's I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. So the fact that I don't hate it makes me seem like I love it in comparison to the fan consensus, I guess you could say.
That's how the internet works. Apparently, I hate the Dragon Ball Super manga. I guess because I haven't said anything positive about it in the last week. Like, I don't really know how people come up with these narratives about things, but I totally see where you're coming from.
It doesn't feel terrible, but it doesn't feel like anything either. I mean, like the Bardock special also had that kind of element where it's like, well, here's a bunch of dialogue that's mostly there to explain stuff that we know happens later, but it made it feel more dramatic compared to this.
AJ, how'd you feel about the opening of the movie? I feel like, let's talk about Broly, let's talk about the fights, but I don't know, as an outsider perspective who's looking forward to seeing the film, the opening just has me scratching my head a little bit.
I don't hate the opening. I think it's okay. I think I do agree. It feels incredibly contrived, and it sounds exactly like that little comic strip Jake described. But it doesn't. I don't think that feels too bad for me. And I think the inclusion of Minus, I think, excuse me, at least on paper, I think makes some sort of sense, especially when you sort of combine it with the marketing material where it starts talking about, 3 different fates, Goku, Vegeta, and Broly. So we're going to see how, Broly ended up being exiled and lived on this horrendous planet. Oh, now we're going to see Goku's story. Fair enough. And I think had the film taken those themes, run with them, and done something with them later in the film, which of course we'll get to, I would have been okay with it. But it never does that. And so in spite of me thinking, well, I mean, okay, they've taken Minus, haven't actually done anything with it. If you didn't like Minus, you're not going to like it now. And that's where I am. Yeah. I don't think even if they'd taken Minus and done something interesting with it to make it its own interesting self-contained story, I still wouldn't have cared because it doesn't do anything with it. That was my biggest issue with it. Fan service stuff aside, why is this here? You never get an answer for why is this here. So that was sad.
It's like if you haven't seen the main series, and if they didn't have the same name, you wouldn't know that the Frieza in the opening is the same character in the rest of the movie. They don't look the same, and there's like nothing to connect his actions in the second half of the movie to what he does in the intro.
All right, well, tell me more about that. And again, we'll get to the fights. We'll get to Broly. Tell me about Frieza in this movie, because that's what I don't know. I mean, I've read our entire summary that we have on the site, so I do know. So I'm just, playing dumb a little bit here. But what is the point of Frieza in the movie? Like, I get he's the one with the Empire, and technically the Saiyans are part of his Empire, and technically he's alive. Like, what role does Frieza not just have, but what does he bring to the film?
He's sort of like a court jester. Like, he's a puppet master, and I think he's incredible in this film. Like, as I guess sort of stitched in as he feels, I love his presence in this film. I think he brings so much comedic value to a lot of the scenes, and I think somehow it feels natural. Somehow, I'm not even sure how to put my love of Frieza in this film into words, because it's this great, almost sort of Joker-esque presence.
Isn't that how a lot of us felt about him in the Tournament of Power, though? Where it was like, oh, we really want to boo. All right, we're going to do Frieza. You know what? This actually kind of worked in the end. Is it just a continuation of that here in the film?
Yeah, he's more actively comedic in the film.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if it's a spoiler, if we want to say what his wish is.
I guess save it. We'll just say that there's a comedic bent to it.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of what I was saying before is that in the opening, all the stuff he does in the opening is just to set up the stuff from the main series with his relationship with the Saiyans and the Namek arc and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then, which is unrelated to what he does in the present day stuff, because that's all following on from the new status quo after the Tournament of Power. Another analogy, like his new position in the present day is kind of like Dr. Eggman in Sonic, where Eggman is like past a certain point in the Sonic games, the plot of every game is that Eggman gets a new ally to try to conquer the world, and then the ally inevitably betrays him. And that is exactly what happens with Broly in this film. It seems like he's now fallen into the kind of, he starts the film like, oh, what can I do to beat Goku and Vegeta, and then he tries this scheme with Broly, his new recruit. That fails. Then he ends the film, it's like, well, I'll just try something else next time. Mm-hmm. It's like, it feels like, or like a kind of Power Rangers setup, the kind of thing where it's like a weekly show where every week there's a recurring bad guy who has a new scheme that try and then fail, and then it goes back to there's going off this film, like, I'm not sure what the forward progress of the franchise as a whole is going to be.
A long time ago, I don't remember who was on, what we were talking about. I think it was Mary and I was saying something like, oh, if we're going to have more spin-off stories and special features, I'll take some more Cyan and Frieza back history. That would be cool. I always enjoy that. And Jake, I remember you took me to task on that. Like, well, actually, that's kind of all we get all the time is more of that. And it just makes things more convoluted. And, I've kind of come around on that a little bit. I basically agree with you. At the same time, I still remain curious about all of that. I feel like I have very conflicted feelings within me as I hear all about this and how Frieza is playing out and what, like going backwards and forwards in time with Frieza and these characters. Like, I want it, but I don't want it. And it sounds like it's okay, but then it pulls from things I don't like. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm also going to throw out here that Frieza has he kept the exact same staff from, the day he met the Saiyans up until the Namek arc. The Ginyu Force, they're there. The same 5 members of the Ginyu Force, wearing the same clothes, Ginyu in the same body he has, Zarbon, Dodori. It's like no one's died or been, like he hasn't hired or fired anyone in those 30 years.
Well, I guess he had a pretty good run for a while there. That's fine.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously the animators, they just wanted to draw all the classic Frieza henchmen, but yeah. I don't know. I would have loved it if it was like the Ginyu Force, but Ginyu has a different body. It's like everyone else is the same, but he's like some crazy looking guy we've never seen before, but doing the same Ginyu poses.
It makes poor old Togama in F just seem so much more sad.
Oh yeah. And we didn't get to see Abo or Cabo.
Right. That would have. So we do have the same kind of like half-hearted Tarble mention in this movie, right?
Yeah, but not by name. Again, he's just. They mentioned Vegeta has a younger brother who he doesn't care about whatsoever.
I feel like that's as far as kind of everyone's willing to take it at this point. They're not really super committing again. All right. Is there anything else with the existing like back history lore that you thought was interesting or worth noting that they brought to light here in the film?
I thought it was kind of hilarious that Shigeru Chiba was just using his Pilaf voice as young Reddits. I thought that was hilarious.
I've been watching a lot of Fist of the North Star, so having him as the narrator, and then he also just showed up as another character, and with Dragon Ball, like I'm getting the full range of this character recently in my life. It's pretty spectacular, so looking forward to that there. All right.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. That scene where they have young Raditz and Vegeta and Nappa, they're with, this is after the planet Vegeta's been destroyed. There's these 2 other Saiyans with them.
Yeah.
They don't get names, but it's like, yeah, we'll never know what happened to those guys. That'll have to be the next movie is the fates of those 2 random nameless Saiyans.
Right. Who are these characters that Raditz says and counts are still alive? And can he be relied on at any point anymore? Maybe Raditz can't count. Maybe it runs in the family. Who knows? All right. Take me a little bit further into the film. So we've been talking about Frieza and this back history a little bit. Where do we go from there? Does it feel natural as at this point in the franchise, this is the right story to tell?
I don't know about natural. Maybe it would have been too obvious, but it seems like in the wake of the Tournament of Power, the next natural step would have been something else focusing on one of the other universes or something like that. But so this seems like, I think even Vegeta says in that opening scene where, no wait, it's Goku's the one who's like, oh, I'm upset, I want to get stronger because there's strong people in other universes, and then Vegeta's the opposite, where it's like, no, we got to focus on this universe because Frieza, we don't know how strong he'll get. But I don't know, I guess I almost feel like the natural progression would have been another strong opponent from a different universe, but maybe that also would have just been too predictable.
Well, is the predictable route what Heroes is doing right now, where it's, this giant space war?
Yeah, I guess maybe that is the good part of the good thing about Heroes is it's there to do the obvious thing always.
And then on the other side, Broly is likewise kind of the most obvious thing ever, so they're doing it over there as well.
Yes.
All right, well, just keep taking me further into the film here.
Sure. So where do we go? We go from minus, and there's a very, very cool transition through into the present. You get a nice little sort of montage, an animated montage, in fact, of Goku and Vegeta, or I guess mainly Goku, growing up. And that sort of leads you into this slice of life section, which it was one of my personal highlights. I know, Shintani said, I want to focus on the comedy, and he definitely did, because holy crap, that sequence, the whole scene here is just spectacular. Everyone's moving and bouncing around, and the sort of little training sequences are amazing.
If we want to do a 3-hour version of this podcast, we could talk about the ramifications of the scrolling year counter.
Oh,
and
God,
all
yeah.
of the various timeline issues raised by this movie's time frame, but probably skip that for now.
But yeah, I mean, you go through this section and, like Jake was saying, it feels like a continuation of the Tournament of Power. You have Goku sort of reflecting on the people he fought and sort of Whis raising sort of interesting questions. Okay, Goku, what do you want to do now? That stuff I thought was good.
Goku, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah. Well, who knows at this point? And so you sort of move from that point onto Broly. I guess it kind of skips forward as well, and you get another bit of contrast between, here's, happy boy Goku thinking about fighting things, and here's Paragus and Broly on this crazy, desolate planet. I think that's the kind of contrast that works very nicely in this film. And I guess the introduction to Broly is kind of amazing. I mean, Sumitomo's score, I have to talk about it. Sumitomo won me over in this film.
I have it on the list. Oh, you're getting ahead of me.
I'm so sorry. I was
going to say Sumitomo. Go Sumitomo, go, or no Sumitomo, no.
I've ruined it. You can edit it in. It'll be magic.
No, it's fine.
It's ruined. I'm sorry. But no, he introduces this Broly motif sort of from the very beginning of the film, and it's worked into almost every single track. But there's this sort of really distinct contrast between sort of that motif at the beginning of the film with sort of young innocent Broly and this sort of big hulking revelation of modern, I guess, contemporary Broly in the current era. And it's really, really powerful. And it also completely goes against the way that New Broly is characterized. And the way New Broly is characterized is just phenomenal. For me, it's some of the best stuff Toriyama's done in years. He's this sort of Tarzan character, and we were saying earlier, Chilai and Lemo pick him up and take him on the ship, and yes, that transition is kind of jarring, but then everything from that point onwards, the sort of next, I guess I'd say maybe 20 minutes, half an hour of the film, their interactions are incredible. I was blown away by just how charming those three are, and how you fall in love with these characters without you don't really get any sort of backstory on, Chilai and Lemo, really. I mean, there's sort of offhand comments, but you fall in love with them just through their dialogue. And to me, that felt like classic Toriyama. And I loved it so, so much.
That's the kind of thing he says he focuses on, where it's, I'm very particular about the way the characters talk and talk to each other. And it sounds like that really shined here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, speaking of Tarzan, it seems like the point of comparison is that the new version of Broly is supposed to parallel Goku in a lot of ways. Like the original Goku's starting point, where, he's been living more or less on his own out in the middle of nowhere, and then suddenly somebody from civilization finds him and befriends him and takes him back to the world. I mean, in that way, Chilai is essentially the new Bulma.
Okay.
And I guess Lemo would be Oolong? I don't know how far we can take this, but yeah, it's the kind of Chilai and Lemo, it's the kind of standard, it's like the rookie and the veteran, where Lemo's been in Frieza's army for ages and ages, and then Chilai has just joined recently because she stole a galactic patrol ship. So it's a kind of obvious contrast. And it's the thing Toriyama has said a lot, where he introduces new characters in pairs so that they can talk to each other, and that provides exposition.
Instead of saying, well, as you know, I am blah, 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 just have these two kind of play off each other while having Broly around them. All right, sounds like it works. Good.
Yeah, so this next section, I guess, it works well for me as far as Broly's characterization goes, because aside from the interactions with Chilai and Lemo, which are great, and you get this sort of very naive, innocent side of Broly, you also have some amazing backstory, talking about how he got his pelt, which was a plot point I absolutely loved. And I won't spoil it because I really think it's best discovered through seeing the film. But alongside all of this stuff, you get these little hints of Broly's rage, from his introduction, where he sort of, comes flying in with this big dramatic Sumitomo score, but you also have sort of, little interruptions where you sort of see how he values his friends, with there's like a Frieza Mook who tries to sort of cause a little bit of trouble, you sort of get some hint of things there. And it also sort of establishes the relationship between him and Paragus in this film. And that stuff is just, it's great. It's the kind of thing where I'm sat there going, man, this feels like 2013 again, where I'm sort of discovering something new in the Dragon Ball universe. And and at the same time, I'm also sat there going, but this is Broly and Paragus. How is this new? How
is this new and good?
Yeah, it's crazy. But that's the feeling I had while watching that particular section of the film. Like, wow, this is actually, I'm so invested in these two new characters, two new old characters. And I'm gripped and I want to see where this goes. And it's such a cliche thing to say, like, I want to see more, but I did. I was so taken aback by that feeling, and I was so glad that it works so well. It's a shame it doesn't last all the way through, and we'll get to that. But that sort of opening part of the film, I was really astonished.
Take me forward into, all right, we've got all this setup going on. How does then this come to Goku and Vegeta? Does that feel like it makes sense? And the instant we get there, is it just fight from there on out?
It makes no sense to me in the slightest. This for me was really a very sort of confusing part of the film for me almost. Like, we have, like I said, an hour of setup talking all about this thing for revenge. And the revenge is on Vegeta, really. Goku's not really a part of it, in spite of the fact, we have his whole origin story, but that's another conversation in and of itself. But what I thought was kind of weird with this transition from the build up into the fight was that they sort of get there and it's like, I've come to exact revenge on you, and everyone's just kind of like, okay, don't really care. Okay, fight time now. And it was at that point I'm like, well, we haven't really got an established reason to fight here. What's the sort of motivation behind the next sort of 40 minutes of the film? Because nobody cares about the revenge anymore. This is just, it's an afternoon fight now.
So Paragus wants revenge on King Vegeta, who has been dead for 30 years.
Right.
But now he's transferred that to his son, who is Vegeta the Fourth.
The Fourth.
but yeah, Vegeta, he doesn't care about Paragus. Goku doesn't care about Paragus. Paragus doesn't care about Goku, because Frieza and Paragus have a conversation beforehand where it's like, I only want revenge on Vegeta, so Frieza's like, oh, I can handle Goku, because he's the one I want revenge on.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, Frieza wants revenge, Paragus wants revenge, but none of the people Paragus actually wants revenge on are there anymore. Goku just wants to fight because he always wants to fight, and Vegeta is sort of the same way, but maybe 60% as into it. I mean,
okay.
There's explicitly a line where Bulma's like, what are you doing? Just get the Dragon Balls back so I can get my wish. And Whis is like, well, no, they're a fighting race, so this is just what they do, more or less. So they're fighting because they like to fight, ultimately. I mean, in a way, it makes too much sense. The motivation is explicitly that Frieza has just recruited these people to kill Goku and Vegeta, and then so he's brought them to fight Goku and Vegeta because he wants them dead, and then Goku and Vegeta just like to fight for the sake of it. But yeah, the big whole revenge thing drops out because, well, first off, because King Vegeta's not there anymore, and also because Paragus is just killed midway through anyway. So by the end of it, they are explicitly fighting just because they've begun fighting. Broly is, at this point in the fight, getting beaten, and he can't go, he's stuck in his kind of pseudo-Ozaru form.
Okay.
Like, he can't go proper Super Saiyan, and so Frieza's like, oh, I know, I'll just kill Paragus to get an emotional reaction out of Broly to push him to the next level.
Got it.
So he kills Broly and then says, like, oh no,
Paragus.
Broly's been killed. He goes into this, Frieza goes into this very comedic mock, outrage, horror kind of
so
thing over his own actions. It's like, oh no, somebody other than me has killed Paragus. and so that drives the plot forward that way. So Broly goes Super Saiyan, and then the tables turn. It's like, the tables turn repeatedly throughout this movie. It's a big kind of seesaw game in that regard. But yes, it does seem like Toriyama, he did take the bare outline, that revenge plotline from movie 8 and Paragus dying. Like, It seems like he must have based that off the original movie. It doesn't seem like if he was doing this from scratch that would have happened.
My question for this part of the movie is what my feeling was on Resurrection F, where it's they're just fighting, and like it's taken forever for Goku to get there, and then when he does, they just fight for what feels like, I don't know, 300 minutes and nothing is happening. Does it feel that way in this movie? Because like all of us know at this point that we're leading up to Gogeta fighting Broly. So is the intermediate fight stuff kind of worthwhile on its own?
I think it is. Yeah, I think this film is like the biggest demonstration of just how important direction is. Like Resurrection F, it's a cool experience the first time around. It has no rewatchability at all. This film, it grabs you by the throat and it doesn't let you go. It's impossible for you to sit there going, can this end? Because for me, I just find it's so impressive, and it's so confident in what it's doing, and what it's doing so well that that didn't even enter my mind at all. Like
Interesting.
And I don't know if it even would like a year down the line, because even though yes, for the most part it is so much fighting, the actual tone of the fight varies drastically. Like for me in Resurrection F, it was kind of like, sure, we're kind of supposed to take this seriously, but it's not really taking itself seriously. Like even the music is like,
God, Goku and Frieza were just being snarky at each other, just back and forth. Like, oh, really? You can do that? Well, I can do that. Oh, you can do that?
Right,
well,
exactly.
I can do that.
Like there was no real drama to it, and then Goku gets shot through the chest, and now we're supposed to feel some sort of drama, and that, by that point you just don't care anymore. This film kicks you off. There is so much drama, and then there's some comedy when it feels appropriate to have it, and then there's more drama, and the sort of the dynamic of the fight goes through so many different motions, but it does it very naturally that I never like there's no point where I'm sat there bored out of my mind like I am with Resurrection F these days. Like I think that is a testament to Nagamine's skill as a director. Like that to me, I'm there are very few people who can pull off 40 minutes of fighting and make that entertaining the entire time. So that worked for me. I do think the fight has issues with tension, and this is not necessarily the fault of the film. I think it's more an issue with the franchise, where there are so many possibilities that it's very, very sort of hard to believe your characters are in trouble, because there are so many things they can do to get out of it. And the film, like the film does its best to sort of take you through all the sort of different forms that are mainly used. But at the same time, it's in this very difficult spot where it's like, okay, this is part of Super, and Super as an anime has its original forms like Blue Kaioken, and it has, Blue Evolution or whatever it's called. And that's never going to appear in a Toriyama written film. Most likely,
Well, you say that, but who really knows what's going to appear when?
Very
I feel
true.
like at this point.
But like that was the thing for me. Like what's going to be included? Is this going to be included? Also, is this going to happen? Now, what? Like there's no point in the film. Oh,
come on. The big question was, all right, is Ultra Instinct going to save the day?
Very true. But
and then no.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much debate. Is it in the film? Is it not?
Oh, we're not going to do that.
No, we're not going to do that. Definitely not. But for me, it was that lack of sort of any sort of dialogue to kind of go, we're out of options here, and this is kind of why, or
okay. So you're saying it was going on enough, like it was enjoyable, but you're sitting there going, we have so many things we could do to just kind of like this.
Right,
could end
exactly.
At any point.
It's like there are points where it's like, okay, Goku is struggling here, but at the back of my mind, I'm like, well, he shouldn't be, because there's so much that he could do at this point, so I can't really buy into this.
Well, does that bring us to Gogeta then? Like, did it feel like that was a natural endpoint to the struggle, the fight?
I'd say for me, not really. It seems kind of like AJ is saying, there's so many different other options they could have used that it feels, I mean, it's logical, but also to a certain extent feels arbitrary.
Yeah.
Like they even discuss, it's like, well, we could have used the Patara, but we don't have Patara, so we're use this other different method of fusion.
Yeah.
And then also, like AJ mentioned, so they don't have Ultra Instinct. I don't care what anyone on Earth says, they just do not have Ultra Instinct in this movie. They don't have Kaioken Blue. They don't have Vegeta's Blue Evolution, which, if you're watching this immediately after seeing the Tournament of Power arc, it does kind of stand out that they don't use those. Because they use those in the Tournament of Power. They use those constantly against Jiren,
right,
all the time. And so it's kind of weird. Like, there's no... To have those just not be there, it does seem weird that it's like...
The film references the Tournament of Power, but they're not here.
Yeah, it's odd that they just immediately leap to fusion instead of taking it to the... It seems like the next logical progression would be Evolution or Kaioken, And I think it would have been at that point, it would have been tedious for them to have included them because there are many, many transformations in this film. I think they managed to keep it interesting, and it keeps it from feeling stale at any point. But at the same time, they push it as far as it can go. Like, even one more segment, even one more transformation would have really probably been the tipping point.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, like, they could do the Genki Dama. They could summon the Omni King. They could have they do have Whis fight. Whis distracts Broly for a while, and it's pretty clear that Whis has the upper hand. Like, he doesn't seem to have any trouble against Broly. So it's like, if they wanted to, I mean, Whis is supposed to be neutral, but it's like, it's clear that Broly could not beat Whis.
Yeah.
And Beerus is also, like, on the other side of the planet, babysitting Bra, taking a nap. And it's, at the end of the movie, Goku says that Broly is probably stronger than Beerus, but still, it's like, Beerus could have been a help if he had shown up. So it's like, They still have all these other things that could have potentially come to save the day.
But like that's the thing. Like, I'm not trying to say I need the film to go through all of these different things. I think you're right. That would have been absolutely ludicrous and would have taken the film, over the line from entertaining action to just total tedium. But yeah, it's just, I can't decide if that's where the franchise is at this point, or whether that's something that could have been alleviated through sort of different, like through sort of placing the turning points in different places. I mean, if we've gone into spoiler territory at this point, but for example, the film frames Goku struggling when he's Super Saiyan God, and so he hasn't gone blue yet. He hasn't even exhausted the most standard of things.
Yeah.
And
His new norm.
Yeah, so it's that sort of thing where I'm wondering, well, had this moment maybe come when he was blue, then would I have felt differently? Would that have felt like a more sort of, here's a point of desperation or not? So I'm not sure. It's a question I'm still not sure on. Is it the franchise? Is it the film? I don't know.
Because Nagamine said in an interview, like, one of the things he wanted was to make Blue seem really strong. I get implicitly what he's saying is that Blue probably hadn't seemed too strong in the Super anime by that point. Because it does seem like in the Super main series, like, it's kind of useless by the end. Like, it never really, there's no big win for Super Saiyan Blue that I can think of offhand. And so I guess he wanted to turn that around, but it's still, because there's that legacy of Blue being Goku's new normal that he uses in pretty much every situation, it ends up feeling a little bit like, well, what's the big deal? He still hasn't even done Blue yet, instead of, oh my god, now he's going Blue.
All right, well, tell me about Gogeta. Was it much like having Frieza and the minus inclusion, having Broly? It really seemed like Toei and Shueisha sat Toriyama down and said, all right, come up with some ideas. By the way, here's a bunch of old stuff that sold really well. Throw it all together. Did Gogeta just feel like, just like we saw with Toei doing the screenings of, for no reason, we're showing movie 8, the Bardock special, and movie 12, and like they telegraphed everything from the start. Did it just feel like picking and choosing little elements, and Gogeta was just one more element they chose from?
I mean, like, there's no reason why they couldn't use fusion dance. Like, again, getting back to the point where it's like they have so many options, it almost would seem illogical for them not to consider that as an option.
Sure.
So it makes sense in that regard, but it does have a sort of a feeling of, again, like, there's not much tension. It's like, well, we can do this. We can always do this. There's no reason we can't do that. And I guess the movie itself didn't bother me the way they use Gogeta, but there's the marketing where it's, apart from the fact that they blew the lid on that whole thing way early, there's the fact that when they announce him, it's just like, oh, Gogeta joins the battle. It's, like, explicitly, they're marketing this on the assumption that you already know and love Gogeta. It's not like, who's this new character? It's, oh, here's this guy you know, and he's in the movie too. Mm-hmm. So that bugged me more than the actual movie itself, I guess.
Yeah. I think this is also another point that I guess kind of ties into the tension aspect of the film. The film really sort of wants to go out of its way to make the film feel like a big group experience. And, Nagamine said this, he was inspired by the Mexican fans, chanting during episode 130 and 131 of Super. That's why we have the chanting in the soundtrack, which, by the way, I have grown to love now. It's Gogeta appears, and then the next 10 minutes of the film are the most one-sided, insane beatdown of Gogeta against Broly. It's like the film suddenly goes, we don't actually care about sort of tension now. This is literally just going to be fans sitting back going, Gogeta, 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 as your eyes explode from insane animation. Like that's kind of where the finale takes you. It's hard for like, this is the reason why I find it hard to talk about this film, because it's an incredible experience, and it's something, I have no issues going back and revisiting time and time again, because I just have so much fun with it. It is a fun film. And I mean that sincerely. I'm not, I may have said that about Resurrection F years ago, but in this case, I really do think it is a fun film. But I think as a film, if you take away that and look at, what is this? How does it function as a narrative, as a whole? It doesn't really come together for me. And that's why I'm so divided on it. And that's why, it's hard to write a review, because you almost go into that sort of hack writer mode where you're like, fans of the franchise will love it.
Exactly. That's everything I've heard is like, well, it sure is a Dragon Ball film. I mean, it's beautiful and everything about it is well crafted, but at the end of the day, it just is what it is.
Yeah. And it's like, it's at that point where it's like, well, who else is watching this film? So where do we sit on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's made for Dragon Ball fans, but also, like, it's the most mainstream property that it can possibly be, so that is for everyone. Does it feel like, I don't know, does it feel like an Avengers movie at this point, where you just expected to know who everyone is, and they'll go do stuff, and great?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, I almost feel like I'm turning up for a boxing match, a wrestling match, a sports event, and I'm just,
right.
rooting for the good guys. But that's another point that kind of bothers me about this film. Like this is so frustrating. I like this film, but there are so many issues with it. And every time I talk about them, I feel like I'm just...
Well, I know. We have to say, like, being critical of something does not necessarily infer anything more than that. Like, you're allowed to be critical of things you like.
Yeah. So this was the one thing that sort of bothered me. It's that the film goes out of its way to sort of paint Broly as this guy who is actually quite a pure-hearted good guy, and he's essentially being used by his, vengeance-driven father. Fair enough. And the fight starts, and you kind of... There's moments where you feel sorry for him. There's moments where, sort of very early on, Vegeta goes to blow him away, for example. And, for me as an audience member, I'm like, well, I've just watched this guy grow up, and I feel for him in a way here. But then that starts to disappear. And at that point, the film feels kind of confused because, on one hand, I love Goku and Vegeta and I want these characters, to succeed. But at the same time, now I love Broly. And then I've got the soundtrack going, go Broly, go, go. But then it's also going, go Kakarot or whatever. So like even the film itself is unsure on who you're supposed to root for. And it's at that point, it goes back to this film is essentially a sports event. It's a wrestling match. And, and then again, that loops back to, well, that doesn't function as a competent narrative. That's not really how films are supposed to work. There's supposed to be, a protagonist and an antagonist. And
well, who says what a film is supposed to be?
But you know what I mean? Like you can muddy those lines, but it just, I don't know. It's confusing.
It feels like they're muddied out of just laziness, not laziness, but they're not being muddied out of, they're not being muddied intentionally. They're just muddied because they're muddy.
Right.
Okay.
Like there are movies that come along where they break all the rules of what you're supposed to do in a movie, and they're great.
Yeah.
Usually that's because the rules. It's like the cliche where you have to know the rules before you can break them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you have to have a good guy and a bad guy. I'm just saying that's the way the film tries to paint itself is like that, but also trying to invert that, but then not doing that. Like it's confused with what it wants to do. And I think confused is really the bottom line for me with this film. Like the themes of the film are confused, the good guy and the bad guy, what it wants to do with that's confused. Like there are so many elements going on and it doesn't know what to do with them. And that's a shame because the majority of the elements are really, really good. And I think that's why it's so hard to talk about this film, because it reminds me of the Tournament of Power in a way. It's a film that's made up of amazing moments that aren't necessarily strung together in the best way.
Yeah, there's a definite less than the sum of its parts feel. And I think with with a few changes here and there, I think they could have made it just feel that much better. I'm not sure what those changes are, but they
well, that's going to be my next question. You can't just throw it out there. I do worry about, say we've been it's tough to talk about it. We have been talking for an hour. I'm looking at the recording. I do worry about doing a review that is longer than the piece of media itself, and I don't want to keep everyone up all day and all night. I do have a couple last questions for you, though. AJ, the way you've been talking about Broly, I want to hear this both from you and Jake. Was it worth bringing Broly back? And then as a follow-up to that, people that are already fans of Broly and almost the parody reinforcement of Broly that has been memed and exaggerated to death over the years, are they going to take to the new Broly?
I feel like maybe fans of the old Broly will be disappointed, and this was another sort of issue I had, is that once Broly turns into big hulking screaming guy, from movie 8, he's not quite who he was in movie 8, because in this film he has zero dialogue as Mr. Hulking Screaming Guy, and so that sort of edgy thing that appealed to people, who are fans of movie 8, that's not there. And then, if you're not interested in sympathetic Broly, then that's another issue. So maybe if you were a fan of the old character, you won't like this, but for me, I always felt like old Broly just felt like the total antithesis of everything a Toriyama villain should be, whereas this feels perfectly Toriyama, and I love that he has nuances to his personality. And another aspect that really brought me back to that feeling in 2013 Battle of Gods is that the film feels like it's expanding its horizons, because Broly isn't just kind of tucked away at the end of the film. He doesn't die. He's put off on his planet. Goku comes to visit him, and there's this nice sort of feeling that, hey, we might meet again. And I really loved that feeling, and I would love to see more of Broly. So for me, the answer is, yes, I'm glad they brought him back, and I would love to see more of that character, because I guess now that the movie 8 soft remake reimagining is out of the way, what's left is a really interesting character.
Well, Kula is next. That's where we're going. Jake, what was your take on Broly coming back? Do you think it was worth it?
I think right now, looking just at this movie, it was worth it, but I'm afraid that the people in charge of the franchise might take the wrong lessons from this. Yeah. And kind of like you said, they might just be like, well, I guess the way forward is just to bring back as many new stuff as we can and have Toriyama put a kind of new spin on it.
Yeah.
And I think if they do that, that'll get old pretty quickly. I feel like they managed to pull it off once. I don't think they can pull it off again.
Well, this is kind of, I don't know, the second, third, fourth time. I mean, Frieza came back for Resurrection F, and a lot of people said at the time, like, oh, he's been back in movie 12 and Eradicate the Silence. Like, well, technically, that was just Toriyama doing it for the first time. But yeah, it's like, so we just keep bringing people back. We brought 17 back. We brought Frieza back. We brought Broly back. And now if we just extend into the expanded universe of Dragon Ball, is that what we want to do here? I don't know.
I mean, that's not what I want from the franchise personally. I mean, if that's what other people want, then I guess fine. I mean, don't want to hog the whole franchise to myself, but I feel like, I don't know, I have a bad feeling that like 10, 20 years from now, people look back and be like, well, this is where it all started.
This is where it started. All right. AJ, I want to give you, because I'm sure I'll hear hell if I don't give someone a couple moments here. Do you want to say anything else about Sumitomo's score in this film?
Yes. Please listen to it. Open your CD and listen to it.
No, it's fine. I like the way the plastic looks.
No, I've said for a long time I'm not a big fan of Sumitomo, and he's never really captured what Dragon Ball is to me. And for the longest time, I've never really been able to define what Dragon Ball music is for me without just going, well, it's Kikuchi. And I don't know if that's really a great answer.
That's a fine answer.
So I think the thing with this film, and we kind of heard it a little bit in the Future Trunks arc, and I think this is why people responded so well to a lot of the music there, is that powerful motif is, I feel like, something that really hooks Dragon Ball fans on music. Like for me, when I think of Kikuchi, there are so many little things, like Piccolo's, little theme is just amazing. Like it's those little things, I'm not a music person, like Therese is going to cry hearing me listen to it, but it's like, yeah, it's like those things, those little melodies or motifs or, things that recur and they work themselves through every different track, on the series. Like to me, that's Dragon Ball. and it's that lack of sort of, what's the word? I mean, you said it, like memorability. You know, like if you can hum those things and they're amazing, and to me that's why I love this soundtrack, because it takes something that's recognizably to do with this character. Like there's something for Broly, there's something for Frieza, there's something for, Goku that also ties in with Bardock, and then, there's and it builds itself throughout the whole film, and it feels huge. And it was so weird to sit there and go, this doesn't have any of the instruments that Kikuchi uses, and it's clearly trying to be its own thing, but at the same time, the spirit of Dragon Ball is here and it's working really, really well. And I can't really understand why this is working so well when I don't really care for much of anything that he's done before, even though there are obviously many elements from stuff he's done before in this soundtrack. It's odd. But no, I think it's something special. And, if that's something, he's going to go with from here on out, fine. I love it.
Well, it sounds like you guys enjoyed the film. There are some critical points there for sure. It seems like there's also a little bit of concern for the future of the franchise, kind of pinning it here. But as a standalone product, it seems like it's well worth, especially the theatrical experience, right?
As far as I'm concerned, this is the best movie to feature Broly and the worst movie to feature Gogeta.
Okay.
And I would say it's the best movie to feature Gogeta and the best movie to feature Broly, because I do not like movie 12. I'm sorry.
I thought you were gonna say it's the worst movie to feature Gogeta. I thought you were gonna flip it around and be like, oh, this is the worst Broly movie, but the best Gogeta.
Yeah, I'm
movie.
a secret bio Broly fan.
Well, it's the best Broly VR movie.
Ooh.
Ah, yes.
All right. Well, again, everyone's going to have their own opportunity to see this movie relatively soon. Hopefully, it's not getting a super wide release, but it's getting a pretty decent size release in America and throughout a bunch of other countries as well. So I very much appreciate you guys going to Japan to go see the movie.
Wasn't the only reason.
I realized that. Well, it was the only reason AJ went over.
Very true.
Also went there to eat Jakoyaki.
Well, there you go. I mean, there's always food. It sounds like you guys had a wonderful time, got a chance to hang out together. I love that part of things. You guys met up with Cypher as well for at least one screening. I absolutely love hearing about all that and seeing everyone get together and enjoy things. So AJ, thank you very much. It's been a while since you've been on the show, so I appreciate you making the time to come on here and chat about things. Jake's going to stick around for a little bit, but why don't you give us what you got going on?
I have not masses going on at the moment. It's that weird, awkward period where the film's out now and there's nothing announced yet. So what do I do? I'll be going to the UK premiere of Broly on Tuesday. So that'll be my first experience with this film dubbed. So I'll probably look at how that turned out in comparison to the original language version. So expect a video on that at some point in the future. I don't really have anything else to say.
Well, again, I say thank you to AJ and to Jake for spending the time here chatting about the film. Everyone, I hope you go off and see it yourself and have a great time. Stick around. We got more of the podcast here. In one of our very, very rare cases, we actually have the four of the Kanzenshuu folks here. I remain Mike, Vegito EX. Still with us is Jake Herms. Hello.
Hello.
Joining in for the segment here, Julian. Hello.
Hey there.
And then as well, stranger. Well, not so stranger because you were kind of here last time. Heath. Hello.
Come on now. I have returned.
Yes, we are all here. It's a pleasure to speak with everyone as always. We got some stuff to talk about, I guess. Heath, you and I have been talking about it's a very exciting year as we look ahead to 2019. Julie and I have been talking about that as well. And Jake, It's going to be a new and exciting year for you as well. We've been talking to you for a little bit about this, but you're looking to a bright future, aren't you?
Yeah, I guess so.
I have mixed emotions.
Well, we all do. Yeah, I'm hiding it in laughter.
But, well, I guess not to beat around the bush too much here, I'm essentially quitting Kanzenshuu.
No way.
Yes way.
You say that, but you're also kind of just looking to, I just need some time away from this Dragon Ball thing.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe another 20 to 30 years. Come back after there's a backlog.
Yeah, well, you've given a good, decade plus of your life at this point.
Yeah, I think I've canned my fair share of shoes.
I think so.
I would say so.
Heath, tell us a little bit about Jake.
Oh, what is there to not say about Jake? Yeah, I've known Jake for quite a while now, and he is a great guy, and I know this has been emotional for a lot of people, and a lot of people out there can be really sad to hear all this, but it's Jake's decision. It's what he wants to do, and I support it. I'm going to miss him, but luckily we'll still be friends, and I will still hit him up with random questions that hopefully he will answer.
You guys sound like you're getting divorced more than
We're getting Kanzenshuu divorced, I guess.
it's amicable.
Right.
Very much so, yes. But I'm very much looking forward to everything that he does in the future and staying in touch.
Yeah, like this is not a, hey guys, I hate you, goodbye. This is...
Well, we tried to do that with Julian and it just didn't work. So
What?
He just keeps coming back to my house.
Are we not supposed to say that?
Yeah, Jake, you came into fandom. I remember you won a contest for on Kanzenshuu EX. I was doing, was it like Write Your Own Dragon World, and you wrote one for Raleigh, and I thought it was the best thing ever, and you won that contest, right?
Yeah, for Budokai 3.
Right.
And the prize was the Funimation release of the 22nd tournament. I guess they called it the Tien Shinhan Saga.
Right.
So I won that DVD set, and I still have never actually watched it because I was waiting to buy all. I was waiting to watch the entire original Dragon Ball series straight through. So first I had to wait for them to release the first 13 episodes, and that took years and years. And then by the time that finally came out, I don't know, I just hadn't. It was hard to schedule time to go through 153 episodes, so I didn't actually get around to do that until 2016. At which point I had just bought the Funimation Blue Brick sets, so I just used those instead.
Who is doing the lawnmower? What is that?
Oh,
Julian,
sorry,
put your leaf blower away.
No, that's my house. Sorry, they're trimming my hedges right now.
Oh, okay.
This is very fitting.
Who is doing lawn work while they're recording?
This is like classic recording right here. It's just random noises. So, and Jake, from there, I'm just going to continue. Got to go forward.
So then, yeah, I hit up Jake on the forum. He started doing some Kanzenshuu translations, and I was in need of a translator, which is how all good stories start.
Yeah, you kind of mirrored what I did with Julian, where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, there's this really cool guy, and he's doing cool stuff, and I'm in admiration of the things he's doing, and it aligns with what I'm doing. And you probably looked at Jake like, he's posting a lot on Mike's forum. I could really use someone like that. I better grab him.
Yeah. And then the funny part was, it turned out that Jake was not from my home state, but he was actually going to college in my hometown. So it was kind of nice because, like, how often does that happen? The fact that I randomly run into you on the internet and then we're actually in the same town,
Yeah.
it was really weird because that never happens for me. I remember going over to, was it turquoise colored
the
house?
turquoise house I was in for my last year of college.
Yeah.
Which was like the only time we actually met in person because there's this kind of weird Venn diagram where you were from that city, I was going to college in that city, but you weren't there at
Because
first.
I was going to college elsewhere.
Yeah, so it's like there's only that one time we actually overlapped.
Yeah, I think I was home for Christmas or something. We're like, we got to meet up. Yeah, that was a fond memory for me. But that's kind of where it all went from there. And then we're like, hey, how many things do you think we can translate and not legally get in trouble for?
And
then it all snowballed down from there.
And at that point, that's really when I feel like the two separate sites started aligning more and more. We were both... When was this? Do you remember?
Around 2008, I think.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I was the first person to go on I was on the Kanzenshuu EX podcast before Heath was.
Yes.
Because you brought me on to talk about the side stories that were in some of the anime special magazines and whatnot.
Yep.
About Bardock and Trunks and whatnot. Because I translated those, so you brought me on to talk about that. So that was like the first official Kanzenshuu EX crossover.
Yeah, that timing sounds about right, because at the time I had moved over to Japan, and I was kind of living my life at that point, and I was kind of spending some time away from the fandom. And I think it was Kai plus the live action movie that started to draw me back in. So you were kind of really helpful in filling in those gaps for me. picking up my slack.
Well, it was shortly after that Jake went to Japan.
Right.
Yeah, so this would have been like
They're never going to let you talk. Just...
Oh man.
But yeah, so I joined Kanzenshuu the year before I spent a year in Tokyo studying abroad. Then I went to Tokyo, spent that year there, and while I was there, that was around, I think Kai started while I was there, and the JSAT special came out, the Goku and Friends Return thing. And so that was one of the things when I was in Japan, trying and failing to get into that.
Is that the one that you snuck into?
Well, I tried to sneak in, but it was very cleverly set up to prevent people from sneaking in, where you had to go up along, the entrance to the theater was up a long flight of stairs, and so there's just this one guy standing that, there's like no way past this guy. And so I tried to be like, I just pretend like I had no idea what was going, like I was just passing through.
Oh,
like,
no,
can I see what's...
I am Gaijin. How do I do this?
Yeah. Can I see? Are tourists allowed inside this random movie theater in the middle of the park here? And he said, no, you can't get in without a ticket. So I went to see if there was a way to get in the back, but there wasn't really. And then I got distracted. I think this was in Ueno Park in Tokyo, but it was in some kind of park. So there's just other stuff going on. So I gradually
disguise yourself as a panda.
Yeah. Well, if I need to find that cursed spring first, then I sneak right in as a panda. But anyway, so I eventually just got distracted by other stuff and wandered away and had like a random tourist day. And then fortunately they put that thing on streaming. Was it? Yeah, it was still streaming anyway. Yeah, they put it online shortly thereafter anyway, so it doesn't matter.
But the story was worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I mean, those were those critical years. I think all of us just kept talking more and more, especially through the podcast. But I mean, it was just a friendship match made in heaven is everything we were working on. And Heath, then in the background of all of that, we've talked about this, but you and I were talking for years about like long-term planning. We got to just merge these two sites. We got to do this.
It started basically as a joke, and everybody knew it was like an inside joke. Then finally one day we're just like, yeah, we should actually be serious about this because it was getting to the point of that's basically what we were doing anyway.
Yeah.
So we might as well just actually do it outright. Right. And the rest is history after that. So they say.
That was my larger, I guess, entry point to talking with Jake more than just on the forum, just as another member, obviously a large contributing member, but just being able to talk as friends and share stories and share thoughts and concerns and wishes and opinions about everything. And I've certainly valued that. I've talked. Dragon Ball has been really interesting to me because it's been these couple like key pockets of making new lifelong friends, that started at the very beginning of when I was working on my website, started in 1998. And then for a couple of years in there, some of the people that I met there, like my wife over those couple of years there, folks like Ryan as well. I mean, these are people that I very much consider my friends, just as much as anyone else that I met in school or through a job or something like that. And I really feel like that continued. I guess Julian showed up at some point along the way there in like 2002, 2003, but I'm jumping ahead to the Kanzenshuu days. That was like the next big, this is like expanding my group of friends. And then just being able to talk with Heath, you and Jake has been very rewarding, I guess I'll say.
Well, that is good to hear.
Yeah. So in my case, I've always been grateful for Jake being there, even though I haven't really had a lot of chances to talk to him, and I've still never met him face to face.
Yeah, you're the outliers.
I don't even know what he looks like, but I've always been
invisible.
Very pleased that while I like to focus on sort of the out of universe aspects of the franchise, the people who play the roles and who write the stuff and the relationship to it, you've always been there to sort of take on the in-universe things, all the nitty-gritty of what stuff is and how it relates to the story in general. And especially, you've always been willing to take the heat for things like power levels. And those fans can get quite passionate about such things. I remember just there was a Toriyama interview that I think I touched upon where he mentions in passing that Yamcha is a cheater. And I got so much hate from several Yamcha fangirls. And luckily, other ancillary material has since backed me up on that point. But at the time, I was like, wow, I just put myself really out there.
It's like they think you said it or something. It's like, oh.
Right. It's like, I can't imagine what you have to deal with.
Yeah, well, I don't check my I don't check my Twitter responses anymore. So basically,
Twitter's going to
blame you.
Totally unusable for you.
I mean, I've got a very long mute list. So
Right. Well, just bouncing off of that, that's something that I've always been incredibly impressed by. I don't know what the right word is for it, but Jake, you will do anything for anyone. You're always willing. You're always game. You're always, even if you're not enthusiastic about the material, you're enthusiastic about and take pride in the end result. Even if it's not something you care about or, have any real interest in doing, sometimes you'll be like, all right, well, this has to get done, so I'm going to do this, and here's my stamp on it. And it doesn't matter who it is. You'll just do anything for anyone, and without any bravado about it. And you're matter of fact about it in such a kind way that it's very admirable to me.
I mean, even if it's not something I'm super interested in, I mean, sometimes just interesting things will come up. I mean, a lot of my random vocabulary in Japanese is just stuff that happened to get mentioned in some interview about, just on some random, like even those, for Resurrection F, where they had the daily blogs that were written by characters, like this completely ephemeral promo tie-in stuff that had nothing to do with anything. Or even also with Resurrection F, the stuff where it's like they're hawking here's the tie-in between Resurrection F and Kentucky Fried Chicken. Here's our new product. Like even that stuff, it like teaches, it can be an opportunity to learn, just like, well, here's how they phrase this kind of thing, this kind of fried chicken advertisement in Japanese. Like a lot of, I've picked up a lot of interesting things that way through things that initially didn't necessarily seem interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I'd say that the breadth of stock phrases that we've come across through Dragon Ball has certainly helped in other ways. Like when I'm watching Kamen Rider with my son, it's like, oh yeah, I pretty much understand everything they're talking about because it's almost nothing but that stuff. And I know I'm going to take heat from Tokusatsu fans for saying something like that, but it's enjoyable.
And I mean, a lot of helping random people, it really does come down to just if I happen to be around with free time and happen to check Twitter or email or whatever, and I just do those random favors. But I feel bad about. I guess I always feel slightly guilty about the sheer randomness of who I respond to, because it is literally if I happen to see this.
Yeah.
If it's not buried under a bunch of other people arguing about power level stuff, then I might help somebody with some random game like one of those app games, like, oh, what's the criteria for these missions?
Yeah. But again, it's like it really feels like, and maybe this is, tell me, is this part of what's contributing to things where it's like you're just always on? That's got to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, there is a certain burnout factor. I mean, the other thing is like, well, sometimes it feels like I'm always on, but the other thing is that my job is that requires me to be away from my phone for long periods of time. So there's a lot of, like, it would almost be easier if I could be around all the time, because then I could parse it out more. But
yeah,
like just with super, like keeping up with that, there's a lot of times just getting off of work and checking my phone, like, well, here's a million things that I've piled up while I've been away.
Oh, yes.
Or even just waking up in the morning, it's like, well, I kind of need to leave right now, but let me translate this preview very quickly before I have to drive to work.
Yeah.
After Battle of Gods happened, it took me a long time to figure out what to ignore and to not get after myself of like getting to stuff right away in the morning, be the first one to answer, to respond to a forum post.
Right.
It took forever to kind of get out of that mode. And so I feel you on that one. It's It's definitely hard to do.
And it is kind of, it has been convenient for me in this time zone that it almost cancels out my work schedule because I end up being around a lot of the time anyway. But I don't know, it's, and there's stuff where it's like I get out of the gym and it's like, I kind of want to go home now because I've been working out for a while, but here's a thing that just popped up, so I just have to spend an additional 15 minutes in the parking lot, sitting in my car, still very sweaty, kind of typing on my phone, like not sure. God knows what if anyone's seeing this, God knows what they think I'm doing.
And yet you've always done it without so much as a complaint. In fact, it almost feels like people sort of came to rely on you being this sort of disembodied translation fairy who would sort of descend upon us and grace us with these things without even having to, be dragged kicking and screaming into the whole thing. Like, I know sometimes it's like, do I really have to respond to this at all? And then I kind of, okay, whatever. Yeah. But you never give off that feeling, and it's really impressed me. And especially because, even now on Twitter, you don't have an actual avatar, and you don't even use your real name. So it's like you contribute in some way to the legend of Hermes, or Hermes, as some people call you, or even Todd.
We would always get a lot of messages for Todd.
Which it's one of those things where let's see, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was that I originally did use my real name, and then I thought, this was back when I had maybe like 100 followers, but I think I saw that my sister had followed me, or I thought I had seen that she was on the list. I'm like, well, I should actually probably change my name, Discourage Family. Like, I want to keep this separate from my actual persona.
I've done the same thing.
So that's why I changed it. But, in retrospect, I never talked to my sister about it, and I don't think she ever actually has Twitter. So it probably was someone who just had, like, the same name, coincidentally. So it was all a mistake anyway. But, yeah, so I guess I should give this story once again. But, yes, Todd Blankenship, I'm not even sure how you should pronounce that, but it's a joke from Jack Candy's Deep Thoughts, which is this,
one of the best segments of Saturday Night Live ever.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So he used to do these things that are just, like, complete, like they're a parody of like inspirational sayings, but they generally don't make any sense. And I've never really watched them in Saturday Night Live. I got introduced to them in the book form because he put out collections of them. So I got introduced to them that way. But yeah, so one of the things he has is where it's like, I wish my name were Todd. That way, if anyone asked me my name, I could say, yes, my name is Todd Blankenship. Oh yeah, I also wish my last name was Blankenship, which is like the quintessential Jack Handy deep thought. It's about nothing. It has no point whatsoever. Right. But yeah, so anyway, when I was trying to think of a pseudonym, that just popped into my head as a joke that only I would get.
Right.
Which kind of contributed to people assuming it was my real name. So I guess in retrospect, I kind of wish I had done something that was more obviously fake.
No, I think it's perfect. It's perfect.
I guess the second option would have been like a Groucho Marx name, like a Rufus T. Firefly, like something more ridiculous. But I don't know. I guess it worked out in the end.
Yeah, I got to say, I thought the blank avatar was deliberate as coming off of the pseudonym that you used. I didn't think that they were just
that originated when we were doing Kanzenshuu, and I was trying to come, with an about us page to put up, and was just like, hey, what do you want me to use? And he's like, oh, use Suke-san. I said, oh, okay, I can do that. And I think we switched it on so we used that on the forum for a while. It was just a transparent ping file.
Right.
And then on Halloween, we would switch it to actually Suke-san for like a day. And then we'd switch it back to being blank. So
that's great.
That's kind of where it all started. And I think you just kind of carried it through after that.
The actual origin was that on the forum, I just didn't have an avatar because I was too lazy and stupid to make an avatar. And also because it's the thing where it's like, people have, if they have an avatar where it's a picture of Goku's face, then you just imagine Goku saying whatever they say. And so I didn't want to do something that would lead to that kind of association. But mostly it was just laziness. But yeah, so essentially I had, reached the point where I was like, I don't know, one of them, I had posted, I was one of like the top whatever posters on the forum as far as post count, but I didn't have an avatar. So so not having an avatar became my avatar.
Yep.
But then when it came to, when it was like, what should my avatar for Kanzenshuu be? Then that was the idea, is like, or get an avatar, but it'll just be a blank. So that's where that, and it
was perfect.
And to justify that by saying, oh, it's actually a picture of the Invisible Man.
It's perfect.
An idea I had that, I think I might have talked with Heath about this, but something for the forum where we talked about on Halloween, you actually see the blood-soaked version of Suke-san.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wanted to do it like it would be like, when you refresh, some people have those scrolling avatars where it's like every time you refresh the page, the avatar would change.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to do that, but it's like I'd have 100 of those, but 99 of them would be the blank one, and the 100th would be the Suke-san. So there's like a 1 in 100 chance of getting the actual non-invisible one. But
I think I switched it one year for you on Christmas and put a Christmas hat on him.
Nice.
Yeah.
If I remember, or Santa hat. We had fun with it.
Well, that's kind of the underlying, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, that we have fun. We always have fun. We continue to have fun. Kanzenshuu is a joy for all of us. And Jake, no matter what you say, you will forever be a part of Kanzenshuu. This is our home. It remains your home. The podcast in particular, no matter what you do, you always have a place here. Anytime you're looking to get something off your chest, or you see something interesting you want to join, we're of course happy to have you. But at the same time, we also respect that you've done so much that you need a break. Everyone needs to take a break at some point. I mean, I took my ball and went home when I was an angry teenager. I'm so glad that we're all at the age when the taking a break is one where you're leaving a legacy. I think that's important. That's admirable. I can't use that word enough. So much of what we have on Kanzenshuu is built on the backs of Jake and Julian. Heath, as much as we do, sometimes I wonder what it is the two of us do.
Yes, very much so.
Yes, but you'll never be a former member. You are a member emeritus. You may not be actively doing stuff, but you never have to be a stranger. You can hang around as much as you want.
We'll always have a chair open.
That's right.
I appreciate that.
And Mike will drink a beer for you.
I will. It's a whiskey night, I think. We're going to raise a glass of that this evening. Well, I don't know what else to say. So, Jake, this is your segment. Anything else you want to throw out there, leave people with?
Well, I guess just to thank you guys for all you've done over the years, and I guess we'll continue to do into the foreseeable future. And thanks to Heath for taking a chance on me those years ago.
Oh, that was my pleasure. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Thanks to Mike for sending me that DVD thing I never watched.
And it may stay that way for quite a while.
Yeah, I think you need to frame it if you still have it.
It's probably...
in a box.
Yeah, I think it's... Well, it's back... it's back at my parents' place, so it's not even on the current landmass I reside on.
That's fine. That's fine. I don't feel bad about it. I don't know how I got an extra copy of that, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, thanks to Julian for just, always being... for paving the way.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't really think of it that way, but I suppose...
Sure, that's a very self-centered way of phrasing it on my part. I don't know.
We've filled similar roles over the years, but complementary ones. I thought that worked out pretty well.
Thanks for complimenting me. Anyway.
It's fine.
We've had a heck of an episode, Jake. I will wrap things up once again by saying thank you as a part of Kanzenshuu, as a friend, as a colleague. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
You're welcome.
There's really not a heck of a lot else I can say at this point, so I'll just leave it at www.kanzenshuu.com. That is Kanzenshuu. For myself, Mike, for Julian, for Heath, and for Jake as well. That is Kanzenshuu. Check out everything that we have there, whether it be the translation archive, whether it be the in-depth guides we have, whether it be the podcast that you're listening to right now, whether it be the forum, everything. It's a heck of a resource. I'm so proud and blessed to be a part of this and working with the people that I work with on this hobby that is Kanzenshuu. I really, really don't know what else I can say at this point. So thank you for tuning into the podcast this week. Thank you for enjoying the website. We will see you next time for episode 466 of our podcast. I already have something great planned for you coming next week. So definitely be on the lookout for that. For all the folks here, my name is Mike. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you next time. Bye-bye. So I'm going to skip the opening of the intro of the podcast, all that.
Ooh, okay. Echo.
What was that?
I'm just fiddling around.
Oh, okay. Knocking stuff over.
Yeah.
All right.
Seems like there might be a buzzing sound on my end.
I don't hear it on Skype.
Okay. Well, I guess it doesn't matter then.
Well, I mean, it does, but do you see it in the waveform or anything?
Yeah, on the Audacity thing.
Is it big or is it just kind of like subtle?
Subtle, I guess.
Is it something I'll be able to work with?
I don't know.
All right.
Okay, it seems
cry later.
Right. It's gonna be 11 p.m. I'll just
seems smaller. Seems smaller now that I've knocked that thing over.
Yay, we're here.
I'm gonna hit record. I'm gonna hit record. There.
It's a 4-person recording.
Yes,
That's
it
rare.
is. Well, I know. It's usually a pain in the ass to edit too, but I figure it's worth it.
Ha ha, sucker.
All right, so everyone, let me know when you got your all your stuff open and recording the correct.
And recording.
Okay.
I'm recording Julian.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Jake, you good?
Yep.
All right. I don't really know how to start.